Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The playoffs are almost here. Lakers versus Grizzlies. We've got big matchups. We've got predictions. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, and sometimes on weekends. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, it's always going to be free for you, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to engage with us, to talk to other fans. 15,000 subscribers strong that channel is, and only going to get bigger as the playoffs go along. Hopefully a deep run for the Lakers. It all starts on Sunday at noon in Memphis, and it is going to be a great series. I do want to let everybody know that Locked On Lakers today is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com /Locked On to get started. So we're going to break down as much of the series as we can. Also have a conversation about Rob Pelinka that we're going to try to get to. People are talking about potentially, Andy, whether or not he deserves some postseason awards love that the executives can receive. So we'll try to get to that. But Andy, we had a great crossover episode with the guys from Locked On Grizzlies, Joe Mullinax and DeMichael Cole. So it was a great episode. We got a lot of great information about the Grizzlies and this series. We haven't had a chance really to react to it, though. This is our first show after that.
First thing I want to react to, Brian, it was actually a comment that we received in the Locked On Lakers YouTube section from this, I thought, really good discussion with DeMichael and Joe. And the overwhelming majority of the comments seem to really enjoy it and seem to enjoy when we do these previews, which I'm glad to hear because we actually think they're fun to do and pretty beneficial. Yeah. But heard from a fella, Jonathan S., who took exception to when I was talking about LeBron last season getting tired of Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks chirping, and at some point basically just telling him, in so many words, shut the F up. You know, you're not bothering me, but you know what? I'm LeBron James. I've done things in this league you people have never done. Just be quiet. He responds, quote, LeBron has done things that Desmond Bane will never accomplish. How the F yo old ass know what Desmond Bane will or will not accomplish before his playing days are over? And then a bunch of question marks and exclamation points. All right. I'm just going to say this right now. And you can feel free to mark this day and then set your iCalendars to 2035 with a reminder to go to freezing cold takes if I'm wrong. There is no way in hell Desmond Bane will ever come close to accomplishing anything LeBron James has done in his career. I'm going to go out on this limb.
Well, certainly, maybe not anything, maybe, but everything, certainly not. And
no, I think in the grand scheme of things, we're pretty much talking anything. The guy's yet to make he's yet to make an all-star team. Like he's a real, by the way, Desmond Bane's a really good player. This is not a dig at Desmond Bane. I would love for the Lakers to have Desmond Bane on this team. I think he's turning into one of the elite 3-and-D players in the NBA. He's young. He has a lot of promise. He could one day make an all-star team. He's yet to do that, which, by the way, in season 3 already makes him painfully behind the curve for this race to match LeBron. I'm confident in this statement. He will never touch LeBron's career.
This is not. This is. It's not exactly a hot take.
The F are you smoking, Jonathan S., to get upset by that statement? Jonathan S.
I think what is interesting about this, though, is like a lot of the conversation that we had for Thursday's show was centered around role guys and stuff like that, because LeBron versus Dillon Brooks is a super duper intriguing matchup for all sorts of reasons, 7 games of that, potentially. And that is going to be the matchup. That is LeBron James being guarded by Dillon Brooks all series long. And what that looks like from game to game is going to be critical. And Anthony Davis.
Do you think it's definitively going to be Dillon Brooks as opposed to Desmond Bane?
I think so. I think Brooks, that's probably the assignment and for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think, I'm not saying literally every possession, but the primary. No,
I know that. But like
primary, I would be surprised if the primary defensive responsibility, unless the Lakers do something to make that more difficult, isn't Brooks on Bane. I think in part because the person who gets, like, if you want to put a primary defender on LeBron and not make it a team thing, like the Lakers, for example, I think are going to throw a lot of different people at Ja. I don't think there is a Ja stopper on the roster. And,
Agreed.
You'll see a lot of Schroeder. You'll see a lot of Reeves. You'll see, Vanderbilt pop up sometimes. I think you might even see every once in a while, LeBron could end up matched up there or something like that, but I think it's going to be a lot of different coverages and a lot of different looks because there isn't one guy. Whereas with the Grizzlies, you do have somebody, first of all, who would want to do that. If Dillon Brooks is going to be personally offended if at any point Taylor Jenkins removes him from that as a primary assignment. So that's a thing right there. But also, like you mentioned, Bane, I don't think you want the guy whose job it is to run around with LeBron and take that sort of physical abuse and do all that kind of stuff. LeBron's going to lean on that player a lot, very strong. And Desmond Bane's got Popeye arms. He's not like a weak little fella. But he's also a much more important part of their offense.
Sure. And Brooks,
so I just don't. I don't think you want. If you have another option, I don't think you want to make Bane do that kind of two-way work.
I think you're likely right. The reason I asked it all is just because even though Brooks is bigger than Bane, I think Bane is more disciplined than Brooks. And my thought is that Brooks might get a little bit too caught up in the matchup, but we'll see.
That's different. If Brooks doesn't handle it well, he gets too good. I think that to me feels like either a game one thing where I think you will see some of that in game one where Brooks is a little too geeked up for the sort of thing, maybe commits a couple early fouls or whatever it might be. This might be one of the ways that the Lakers can get and steal a game that I think is going to be very difficult for them to win. I think we'll talk about this later in the show, I'm sure. I think game two is the real key for the Lakers and of the two of them. And I also think this thing you're talking about could become more of a problem as the series wears on, particularly if LeBron starts to figure out Brooks, which over the course of a series certainly doesn't strike me as impossible. LeBron is a basketball supercomputer. And, you remember what Brooks was saying, the last matchup, I made him go left all game. I made it, it was 8-21 and all that kind of stuff. LeBron remembers all that bleep. And, while Dillon Brooks is by all accounts, we listened to in the show for Thursday, a smart defender, well loved in the locker room, all that kind of stuff. He can't be any more a basketball savant than LeBron, and he's not more competitive than LeBron either. And too much of that will not serve him well. I don't think.
No, I completely agree. That's again the reason that I was asking about Bane versus Brooks to begin with. From a physicality standpoint, you are correct. Brooks is the obvious guy. I'm just wondering about, the ability to take yourself out of a game, which I think Dillon Brooks has. I mean,
Oh, for sure. But just as a matter of game planning, I think too.
No,
it's like,
absolutely.
Hopefully, if you're Taylor Jenkins, you're sort of hoping in the back of your mind, it limits, we'll be so focused on guarding LeBron, because LeBron's not necessarily going to be guarding him on the other end. I think that'll be the Lakers will take their weakest defender and try to put him on Dillon Brooks. And
we talked about it before. I think it'll be D'Angelo Russell.
Right. I think they'll frankly try to bait him into taking 17 shots a game. Every shot Dillon Brooks takes is one that Bane doesn't take, that Jackson doesn't take, that Ja doesn't take. I am open to all of them. If he goes, if Brooks shoots, 52% in this series, the Lakers are going to lose. And I'll be like, okay, that's fine. Dillon Brooks beat him. What are you going to do? But your point about about Bane, though, gets to some of the questions and some of the things that I know both of us wanted to talk about with role players, with different matchups, even things down to playoff experience, some of the intangibles that could play large in this series. So let's get to all that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Nissan. Nissan's most electric player of the week is brought to you by the all-new, all-electric Nissan 2023 Aria, and the award goes to Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder missed the final 2 regular season games for the Lakers with various injuries, and it started out rough during the play-in game versus Minnesota, but he turned it on with real strength in the second half with his electric play. 14 second-half points for Dennis Schroeder, which should have been a game-winning corner 3 before Anthony Davis committed one of the worst fouls of his career. He was 6 of 6 at the line in the second half, smooth and efficient in the clutch. He then led the team in overtime with 4 points, and again, elegant, automatic at the line. The 2023 Nissan Aria packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria, the EV, for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com.
Okay, so before we get back to some of the role guys and some of the intangible stuff, Andy, you had one of the stars in this series, obviously, is Jaren Jackson Jr., a player both of us really enjoy watching. You had some stuff that you have been digging around, poking around in the depths of the internet and have found.
No, I just went to NBA.com and a couple other sites.
But, very obscure very obscure website, NBA.com.
Well, I was thinking about, because, obviously he's the heart of their defense, and he's what makes their defense, elite in a lot of different ways. And I was wondering how the numbers defending the rim, if at all, have changed since Steven Adams and Brandon Clark have been out, basically since the All-Star break. And the answer is not much. They're still third in the league at defending in the restricted area, 63%. The Lakers about middle of the pack in that particular stat, a little under 67%. That being said, though, and I was thinking about, okay, where could be potential weaknesses? The Grizzlies are not a great team at preventing second chance points. They're 18th in the league, so that is an area where the Lakers can capitalize. The Lakers aren't necessarily elite themselves at converting misses, but they're better at converting than the Grizzlies are at stopping them. And also, since the All-Star break, and this is where I specifically think you do miss Clark and especially Adams, the Grizzlies are a bottom 10 team, 21st at defensive rebounds. And the Lakers, since the All-Star break, have been top 10 in offensive rebounds. It could also be maybe an area where you draw Jaren Jackson into fouls, him trying to actually keep the Lakers off the glass, assuming he's trying at all, because rebounding is really not his strength. He's not great for his position, much less a defensive rebounder. He's actually pretty bad at it. The Grizzlies, per cleaning the glass, they're actually better on the defensive glass with Jaren Jackson Jr. off the court. My guess, it's purely a guess, but I think logical. He focuses so much on shot blocking, it keeps him from being either in a position to rebound or boxing out position. And the Grizzlies are also worse at grabbing their own misses or offensive misses with Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor, which could mean opportunities for the Lakers to run off misses if they can actually get those boards. So, that and Jaren Jackson Jr. averaging nearly 5 fouls per 36 minutes, like the narrative about him being foul prone, that is true. So that is something the Lakers should be looking to test. They like to put a lot of pressure on the rim as it is, even knowing that Jaren Jackson Jr. can be there to erase and bother a lot of shots. They should be looking to aggressively attack him and hopefully put him in some positions to maybe pick up fouls, but if nothing else, some positions that I think leave the Grizzlies vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I look at defensive rebounding as another example of what I think will be a key, not the key. I think they're in a series like this. There's not one thing, but the more I kind of think about it, the more I look at it. Which team can keep the other one out of transition?
Yeah,
I think will have a huge impact. Neither one of these teams are great half-court offenses. Both of them are very good when they move. The Lakers are bad still, even with all their defensive improvement, they're still not a very good defensive transition team, or at the very least, the gap between their half court offense and their transition, half court defense and their transition defense is really pretty substantial for a team that has gone essentially to the top of the league since the trade deadline defensively. So whether it is the ability to make the Grizzlies have to stay home a little bit longer on the offensive, to defend the offensive glass, keep the Lakers off the offensive glass, that's one thing. I think shot making for the Lakers is going to be critically important, not just because they need the points and they need to make sure the floor is spaced for LeBron and all that kind of stuff, and AD and all that. But it also, when you make threes, for example, the other team isn't running. When you miss them, they are. And the more shots the Lakers are missing, especially from the perimeter, those are opportunities they're not going to be able to aggressively crash on that kind of stuff. You can crash the glass on paint attempts and stuff more effectively. So, if the Lakers can make some shots, if they can control or make the Grizzlies work to get defensive rebounds, those are all things to me to help them set their defense on the other side, which I think is going to be just incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, you do not want John Morant to get a steady diet in transition. I mean, I don't care what the Lakers do and how attentive they are on it. Like, eventually that is just going to catch up to them. The guy's too good. I mean,
absolutely.
He's difficult enough to contain with a set defense. You start giving that guy the opportunity to run, he will run roughshod. There's no way around it.
Yeah. Which of the, it is easy, I think, sometimes to spend a lot of time on role players and stuff because, if your stars are stars, there is a huge difference as to whether or not Malik Beasley is 10%, 15% better. That could be the 3 or 4% in a tight series. The little things on the margins really do matter. But I'm wondering, which star do you think is going to be the one, if there is one that kind of controls? It's like the stars still have to be stars. It's really, the role guys can step up, and Luke Kennard being a big deal is going to make a huge difference. All that kind of stuff matters, but not if Josh sucks, not if JJ follows out of every game, not if, Beasley's not going to carry the Lakers if Anthony Davis is ineffective. You understand what I'm getting at?
The answer is Anthony Davis, because at the end of the day, this team is at their most special, at their most unique, at their, I think, most unbeatable when Anthony Davis is playing like a guy who, if he played a full season, would be in the MVP conversation. And we've seen decent sized chunks of that throughout this season. And I think if AD had played a full slate, we would have said that we saw more of it this year than we didn't. But, we have not seen it in a playoff setting since the bubble, because the 2021 season, AD was clearly hurt. And, I believe he missed a game, but either way, he was not the same after that injury. And frankly, neither were the Lakers, which underscores my point. Anthony Davis is going to be both the best cure, for whatever might, ail the Lakers, but I think he's also the best thing to take some of the best traits of the Grizzlies out of the picture. Nobody's going to be better, I think, at neutralizing Jaren Jackson Jr. in some form than Anthony Davis.
It's funny because we spent when LeBron got hurt, that was this is sort of put up or shut up time for AD's legacy in LA. It was a major kind of testing point for Davis, and perception wise, keeping the Lakers afloat, from a practical standpoint, keeping the Lakers winning games, enough games to get to where they eventually got, but also just reputationally. And I think for the most part, he rose to the occasion. I mean, he slowed down a little bit near the end, I think. Fatigue, I think, a factor there, and
the whole team slowed down.
Yeah, incredibly aggressive defending, also an issue. But overall, I think he performed in that stretch, trade deadline and on pretty well. It's hard to complain too much. This is another version of that. Like, okay, it's like, okay, the Lakers are back in the playoffs. What are you going to do? And the rehab for AD continues, I think, in this series. Like if he does kind of what you're talking about and plays that superstar level, bubble AD, so to speak, it elevates him in a different way, I think, than even like Ja having a great series or Jackson having a great series. Like that kind of puts those guys on the map a little bit more. But I feel like AD leading the Lakers through to the second round with 5 or 6 or 7 really good games does something to reestablish him in that conversation as one of the handful of best players in the NBA.
Anthony Davis has a championship and he has, some incredible moments in the bubble, but the bottom line is he is still a player that is constantly in prove-it mode. So I agree with what you're saying there.
All right. So a couple more things about this series. We'll do some predictions and we'll maybe try to sneak in a little conversation about Rob Pelinka as well. And we'll do all that next.
Locked on Lakers brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs, they are just around the corner. They involve the Lakers, and there is no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000, a grand bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, really easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to the point scores, or get a little saucy with an exclusive bet like the 2x3, 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. And FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. The Lakers enter Game 1 against the Grizzlies as 3.5-point dogs, and the Grizzlies favored for the series, but not by a lot, minus 136 versus plus 116 for the Lakers. So if nothing else, it seems like FanDuel is expecting this one to go on for a while and be pretty tight, pretty even. Do not miss out on the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
So I don't know if we'll have time. I mean, we can get into this a little bit more the other off days in the series or at some point. But there was a lot of interesting conversations on social media. Heard it on a couple podcasts. Anthony Irwin and Harris and Pete Zayas talking about it. I know you talked about it on the radio this week. The idea of whether or not, given everything that where the Lakers are now and the turnaround that they had, whether or not Rob Pelinka deserves some love for executive of the year, that's given out every year by the NBA at awards season. One of the things that I think is kind of interesting, and I know you looked up some numbers on this, we spend so much time talking about experience in this, in a playoff series, like which team has more or whatever. You mentioned it in the first segment. LeBron's got more playoff experience than all of these players and coaches on both teams combined. Like all of them.
Pretty close.
Yeah. I think actually if you totaled up the minutes, I would like somebody to do this exercise, given these teams of like the active players on these rosters. It's probably relatively close. LeBron versus everyone, and all their combined playoff minutes. But you kind of notice the Lakers as a team don't necessarily have a ton.
Well, the Lakers are seen very much as a been there, done that team. And I think especially in contrast to the Grizzlies, because, while they've been ascending, they're coming off 2 straight playoff appearances. They're still very young. And, the Lakers, I think, are seen in a lot of ways as a been there, done that team. But there are quite a few players on this team with little to no playoff experience. Austin Reeves has never been. Mo Bamba, if he ends up playing for specific matchups or whatever, he's never been. Troy Brown, 3 total games. Rui Hachimura, 5 total games. Lonnie Walker, if he ends up playing.
And Rui's games, which we noted because they were all with the Winning involved there.
Dude, anybody can do the math. We no longer do best of 3. If you've only played 5 games, means you've only played 1 series. That's it. Lonnie, if he ever ends up playing, he has 6 games of experience as a rookie where he averaged less than 4 minutes a game. Jared Vanderbilt has 9 games over 2 seasons. One of those seasons, he averaged less than 2 minutes per game in the postseason. D'Angelo Russell has 11 games over 2 seasons, and we're going to talk about this. He kind of struggled in both of them. Malik Beasley, I would consider reasonably experienced. He's got 20 games over his career, and he's been to the second round. He had a role in both seasons he went to the playoffs. And Dennis Schroeder, AD, and LeBron are clearly playoff experienced. But what I find interesting about that is obviously LeBron and AD, and I would even say Dennis Schroeder, offer more been there, done that. They're the top 3 guys of anybody in the playoffs in this series. But if you look at the rosters from top to bottom in terms of guys that will be playing, the Grizzlies arguably have more experience as a total roster. And if nothing else, they have experience together, which the Lakers don't have other than LeBron, AD, and one god-awful series for Dennis Schroeder in 2021.
And I think that continuity, and look, Memphis has changed. Steven Adams not available. It's a big deal in this series. And Brandon Clark not available is great. Brandon Clark's a great player.
Yeah, I'm glad he got paid before tearing that Achilles.
Me too. But in terms of a guy who is a critically important and very talented and very useful player who is definitely in that smack in that role player category. So that's a huge loss for them. And it's not exactly the same team. That's not my point. But Taylor Jenkins has experience with the core of this group in the playoffs, and if nothing else, has coached this team for a season. He's the Grizzlies have been the Grizzlies since training camp opened. The Lakers have been the Lakers since the trade deadline. Basically, and Jenkins has head coaching experience in the playoffs that Darvin Ham doesn't have. And I think that matters a little bit. But the data points that I think matter more are just, I think fans kind of look at these, roster moves and substitution patterns and all these things as if they are easy to figure out and, like obvious, and they're not. And, certain things are, we will criticize things, but like in the broad scheme of things, there's a reason coaches use an entire preseason and training camp and then the first 2 months of a season. And it's because you need a lot of information and a lot of time to put this stuff together. And so Jenkins is going to be pulling levers with more confidence and more information than Darvin is, because like you say, not only has he played with those guys all season, he's played with some of them in the playoffs. He's seen, whereas the Lakers haven't been together, and a lot of their players really don't have a lot of playoff experience that the coaching staff can look at and say, well, I remember last time. So I think that is a significant disadvantage for the Lakers.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I was thinking too specifically about D'Angelo Russell when we were talking about the value of experience, role players, or maybe even bad experience, because D'Lo is coming off a really bad game in the play-in versus Minnesota's former team, and he's now staring down some other ghosts because last year when he was with the Wolves, they played the Grizzlies in the first round of the playoffs, and the results were not kind to D'Lo. He shot just 33% overall. He was fine from behind the arc, a little bit under 39%, but it was not at high volume. It was kind of skewed by one good game. And if you look at the rest of his numbers, they're actually fine. It's a little under 7 assists per game, but 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. But there was this perception, reality, narrative, whatever you want to call it, that he was getting badly outplayed by Jordan McLaughlin, his backup, which I think came in part defensively. McLaughlin is a better defender than him. In part, there was a game where McLaughlin, the only double-digit game he had, he scored 16 points, and D'Lo was 3 of 12 from the field. And then the last game of that series, Game 6 that the Wolves lost, D'Lo was benched down the stretch, a very high-profile thing. And, defense was an issue for D'Angelo during that series. It was an issue for him a lot with the Wolves. He is, I think, a weak link on this team defensively, but I don't think he is been the problem that he was for the Wolves, at least so far with the Lakers. And it'll be interesting to see exactly how he reacts to that. He still may be dealing with those calluses on his foot, on both feet actually. But either way, heading into free agency, this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be watching with D'Lo. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts.
The Rob Pelinka conversation, it also includes, I think, everybody's greatest, bigger fears of like deciding that they need to blow it up for Kyrie Irving. But that's a show for a different day. The end of this one needs to be about predictions, Andy. Who do you think is going to win this thing?
I am going Lakers in 7. I think it is going to be a really tough series. I by definition, saying Lakers in 7 means I think Memphis could very well end up winning it. But I think the Lakers they have felt like a team that if they've gotten this far, they're not about to stop, at least this early on. I think this is a difficult matchup for them. And I think if they theoretically went a couple rounds in the playoffs, this might actually be the toughest matchup for them. But I think in the end, after all of the bleep that they went through to get here, they're just simply not going to allow it to end this early on. So I think they're going to be able to find a way to work a couple mismatches or disadvantages to their favor. They are going to eke out a very tough, often ugly series.
I agree that it's not necessarily going to be the prettiest basketball for however many games it goes. I hate this matchup with the Lakers. I hate it. There are a couple places where I think the Lakers can leverage things in, a healthy AD, healthy LeBron. The fact that they got these 4 days of rest, they're going to get, the 4 days of genuine rest, no games. It's going to feel like 4 weeks, I think, for these guys because they've been going so relentlessly. It's a huge factor, and I would have certainly picked them to lose their first round matchup had they had to play a second play-in game. That said, I still don't think they're going to win, and I always pick series based on like how I think this is a 6-game series. I have Memphis in 6. People say, do you think they're going to close out the series on, in LA? Okay, I guess that means I do, but I feel like Memphis is a little bit better than the Lakers. I feel like they've gotten the and I think the way the matchups work in this series just doesn't favor the Lakers. Wouldn't surprise me if the Lakers win. I would not be shocked in the slightest. But I sort of feel it's like a 60-40 kind of thing. 60% chance the Grizzlies win, 40% the Lakers win. I would like people to understand, though, I am wrong about a great many things, like constantly. So I hope to be wrong about this as well.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be a really tough. I think it's going to manage to be entertaining even while it's ugly, but I think this is going to feel in a lot of ways like the slugfest you would expect 3 or 4 rounds from now. I think it's going to be like that early. It's going to be physical. There's going to be a lot of talking. There's going to be a lot of animosity no matter how this thing ends. That is a prediction I feel 100% confident about.
Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to watch the show, see all the action happen, and communicate, participate, engage, comment with 15,000 subscribers, NBA fans, Lakers fans, all who will be there game in and game out as the Lakers make their way back into the playoffs and hopefully deep into the playoffs. We will see everybody after the game on Sunday.